at large from a ballot measure. It is one that is worthy of acknowledgement and praise for all those who supported this hospital. That doesn't happen in every community. You look just to our neighboring community in Hollister. It was a complete opposite story. And in fact, tragically, because of HR 1, a potential buyer backed out from buying the hospital, and now that community is left in a precarious predicament when minutes mean everything in an emergency situation. I appreciate the update, especially from you, because you hear how's the hospital doing, you hear from different sources, but to get accurate information directly from the top, I think is an important one. But I know there's a lot of unknowns, right? You're in a process to establish a potential collaboration or partnership. I think that's critical because the options are much less today in light of the federal legislation impacting hospitals that serve patients. That Wattsville Community Hospital serves, Natividad here in Salinas, there's a lot of low-income individuals and families. So the question I have is, in light of all that, and I hope you are successful, and I want to continue to offer and express my support for the hospital, and that hopefully in the end there's a good partnership that helps stabilize it during these challenging times. Question would be, I know the legislature was very involved in not only passing the legislation, but I think the allocated $20 million from the get-go as part of that $63 million number that you showed us, well, what was raised during only the 6-month period. Any other discussions with our state legislatures going into the new session that starts in January about, is there any other additional help coming, or is there available low-interest loans that the state has available that would help the hospital, perhaps not with the long-term solution, but in the interim, being able to work through some of these federal changes that are going to have a significant impact?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Supervisor Leo, and thank you so much for your support and this board's support again over the years. I don't have any final answers for you on that one in terms of here's a dollar we're going to get from the state, but we have been having some really positive conversations with the state. My community and government relations director is here with me today, and she's been helping us make sure that she and I are on top of our conversations with our local electeds. I mentioned Speaker Rivas and Senator Laird earlier today, and they're well aware of where we're at and what we're working on. They have got in Sacramento a lot of holes to plug in the dam as a result of HR 1, right? So it's not just healthcare, and so that is a challenge for them, I think, and they've acknowledged that, and also acknowledged the importance here of this hospital, which they refer to as a linchpin in the organization. If you think about that map that I showed earlier, we also have had multiple conversations with State Treasurer Fiona Ma. She hosted a Zoom meeting with all of the hospitals that received a distressed hospital loan back in 2023, which we got $8.3 million on November 1st of 2023 from the distressed hospital loan program. So far, we haven't had to pay that back. They've continued to allow us to defer those payments for another year. We've also talked with her and are inviting her back again to understand the situation about, another one of those might also be helpful, another sort of a bridge loan to get us to that next step, as our cash situation is where it is, and with the essentially funding that with debt. We've had that conversation at the state level. No answers yet, but we're continuing to make sure that those folks are aware of where we're at, aware of what we're looking at, and aware of our timelines.
And then the other big aspect, I think, that was concerning just the census at the hospital, right? How could Wattsville Community Hospital increase the numbers of patients coming into the door to make it the doctor or the hospital of choice, and to bring those numbers? I think, can you explain what's the board's strategy of how could we turn that around? The community should know, right? That when they choose to go to the hospital, they're supporting their local community hospital. Right. How could we strengthen that message to get those census numbers up to where they should be ideally?
Yeah, it turns out that a lot of, when I first arrived at the hospital, everybody was like, you got to improve the reputation. You got to improve the reputation and why people don't go there. And I think that's part of it. There is some of that. But if you look at the publicly available data, people prefer our hospital to a lot of others that are nearby. You look at the Google ratings, you look at the patient experience scores that I showed, et cetera. What keeps more patients from coming to us or staying with us is our lack of specialty physicians. And that's really where the strategic partnership comes in, where we're looking for other organizations that are already providing healthcare in the local area that have specialists. We need to partner with them so that they have sort of some skin in the game to keeping those patients with us. I'll give you an example. My dad lives on the East Coast. He comes out once a year and with my mom, and they visit the grandkids. My kid is playing Little League baseball. My dad was pitching batting practice to my kid, and my kid hit a line drive off his face, broke his nose. He needed to go to we went to urgent care. Urgent care was like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go see an ENT. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to go to Watsonville Community Hospital. And he was like, I love Watsonville, but they don't have an ENT on call today. So you need to go to Dominican. And so that happens day in and day out, where somebody will either show up at the ER or they'll go somewhere and need to be referred somewhere, and we don't have the same level of specialty coverage that other places do. Other places have an abundance of specialty coverage, and we have a dearth of specialty coverage. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to even that out and spread that out a little bit better so we can keep more patients who we know we can care for at Watsonville Community Hospital there.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And the last thing I would just share, I serve as one of the officers for the California State Association of Counties, and our CEO was just on various news outlets just talking about the impact of not only HR1 but other federal changes, some hospitals losing certain designations, but it's causing smaller hospitals, especially those that serve rural areas of California, in a very precarious situation. I think this month, Glenn County's, one of its 2 hospitals is closing. Inyo, which I'm going to on Wednesday, has another hospital that's on the brink of closing. Riverside, I think the Blythe area, they're struggling with these changes. So I just want our public to know that these federal changes have a direct impact to your community, to your hospital, to your local healthcare workers, and to your access to healthcare when you really need it the most. Yeah. I think that's a story I think that everybody should be concerned about as Californians, that federal changes do have an impact when some hospitals are just slightly on a positive margin or just below on a negative. But with these changes, the direct is quick, it's going to be fast, and it's going to get worse in future years. And I think that's something that we all have to do a better job messaging, that these pieces of legislation are not just a bill debated in Sacramento, but they impact your backyard, your community, your hometown. And that's why I was concerned, because I see what's happening as a trend to smaller hospitals all across the state. And certainly after all this effort and work that the community came together, for me, that was a model effort to save their local hospital. We have to make sure that this is a success story for California, that the community's efforts, its commitment to its hospital wasn't in vain, that we are going to be successful. So I just want to wish you all the best of luck in these efforts to stabilize the hospital further, and so that it can continue to serve the community for decades to come. So thank you for your work and your leadership there. I know it's not an easy job, but I think we also want to convey our support to make sure that the hospital remains a success story.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's take this out to the public at this time, see if there's any public input. We invite folks joining us via Zoom to use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen in your reactions tab, or *9 via landline in order to be recognized. I see no one coming forward in room, no hands up via Zoom, so I'll bring it back and go to Supervisor Church.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, for the great presentation. Excuse me. It's you laid out the challenges that you're facing. I mean, this is a challenge not where you're just taking over a hospital and trying to improve it. You're building a hospital essentially, and I think you laid out the challenges that you need to add specialty care in and other equipment that's coming in, and it's going to be a slow process, a difficult process, especially in these difficult times, which are going to put extra burdens on a hospital which has a past history of of some really difficult financial times. So, I mean, your efforts of you and your team are much appreciated. I have many constituents in the northern part of the district that go there and that need those services. And this is good to get a real good picture of this and what you're facing. It's healthcare, hospitals are expensive. I mean, I think we all got to realize that, and there are reasonable complaints from people because of insurance and how it matches with wages that it's difficult to cover these costs. But it's, hospitals, I know, are not, there's nobody really gouging in here. And there's a choice here between expensive health care and less expensive health care, which means a hospital may fail, is what's happened. And I think we've seen what happens in cases is that if you don't have hospitals that are able to cover costs, are not going to be around. And then we either have expensive health care or no health care for an area. And that's a pretty stark and difference there. And neither choice is really good, but one of them is clearly much better. You want health care, you have to have health care for people. I think, I think we can see between county hospital like Natividad, it's district hospital like in yours. These are really feel critical needs that helping the people that can least afford health care, and that's why these times with H1, the bill and some other cuts that are going forth here are making things really difficult at this point. I do want to really commend you on the improvement from D to B, and I know A is the goal to go to, but that is a real significant increase. I mean, in a year and a half, as you pointed out, and that's a year and a half, and you got started. You're going, there's lingering effects of COVID still going on. Trying to get things developed and set up. It's just really impressive. So again, I want to thank you for the work that you've done, your team that's done. I think there's you have a path forward in a real difficult time, and I know Monterey County would be here to help in any way we really can at this point. And I know that the community on both sides of the river really needs this hospital, and we got to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Supervisor Church. Appreciate it.
So I want to start with a story about being a choice destination. In 1985, my parents moved from Watsonville to King City, and it was October 14th, and my mom kept saying she was having pain, and my dad said, well, let's go to the hospital. She said, I'm fine. All day, every half hour, he said she would repeat it. I'm having this pain, and she just kept repeating, no, I'm not ready yet, not ready yet. And they got my brother and my sisters down for bed at about 10:30 at night, and they were getting ready to crawl into bed, and my mom turned to my dad and said, let's go to the hospital. He said, really? After all day of me saying, let's just go? And he said, all right, let's go to the hospital. They had a choice in King City. They chose not to go there. They had a choice of Natividad. They chose not to go there. They had the choice of the hospital on the south end of town here, and they drove past all of them to go to Watsonville. And I was born October 14th at Watsonville Community Hospital.
Nice.
And so just know you were the choice. And for my family, my grandmother still lives in Watsonville on Lincoln in California, and you're still the choice for our community. And so it's why I cast my vote the way I did when we were put in a position to help. Yep. You have a loud community advocating on behalf of you, and we know the challenges you're experiencing them as sitting on the board at Natividad. Now I feel those same challenges and see them coming down the pipe at the same levels that you're explaining. And so I know that the path ahead is not easy, but I appreciate you stepping up for this community at a very critical time. And I know that we'll look back on it much like we do today at Natividad and say, remember when we got that close, but now it's a shining star in terms of, distributing the healthcare that our community deserves in a meaningful, impactful, and culturally significant way for our communities. So thank you for what you're doing. Looking at the challenges that lie ahead, know that the advocacy is being done. In our communities, we have lost OB and delivery in certain lines and parts of our rural communities. I've heard the stories throughout the state, much like Supervisor Alejo. I serve on the executive board at RCRC, and we've been back in D.C. for well over 5 years talking about the impact to Madera, Hazel Hawkins, and others. So I'll keep it brief because we did have this conversation in depth last week about the big picture, but in the very specific and focused nature of what you have assisted the community in doing along with all your partners, from your board to your union leadership to all those folks who had to have a seat at the table along with those elected officials you mentioned. We want to continue to say thank you for what you've done to get it here, and please consider us a partner, a continued partner as you move forward towards solutions that are meaningful and long-lasting for a community that doesn't just need it but deserves it. It means a lot to us, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. I really appreciate that.
Supervisor Alejo? All right, then with that, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much for your time, and happy birthday next week.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we're going to jump into our next presentation from Richard Vaughn, along with Uday Ram, Alisa Dubetz, and Melissa Lafayette, and Andrea Martinez, regarding a program called Grow America and Civil Economics, CVL Economics, a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Year 3 Annual Update. We'll send it over to Richard Vaughn, our Economic Development Manager, for this presentation.
Morning, Chair Lopez, Board of Supervisors, CEO De La Rosa, Richard Vaughn, Economic Development Manager, and I have Isela Sandoval, our Management Analyst for Economic Development here today. And we will be providing a brief presentation for you regarding our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for our Year 3 update. And online, I believe we have Alisa Dubetz with Civil Economics, our vendor, along with Grow America, who assisted us with putting this together. And before we kick it off to Alisa, if we're able to add her as a panelist, and just wanted to say thank you very much to this Board of Supervisors, to our Economic Development Committee, to our stakeholders, and to all of our partners and our vendors for assisting us with getting this Year 3 update completed and on time. Following this, we're hoping to get approval of this to move forward to Economic Development Administration for the federal government and get that sent over to them once the federal government gets opened back up. So with that, we will kick it over to Alisa to go ahead and get the presentation started.
Great, thank you, Richard. Let me get my screen going. Hopefully everyone can see the big presentation screen. So hi, I'm Alisa Dubetz. I'm a research director at Civil Economics. We are an economic consulting firm that has been working in partnership with Grow America on the 3-year update of Monterey County's comprehensive economic development strategy, which we'll provide some high-level overviews of in this presentation today. So just to provide just a quick high-level overview of what a comprehensive economic development strategy is, also known as a CEDS for short. It's essentially the county's roadmap for regional economic development. It helps align local priorities, guide investments, and position the county for federal funding opportunities through the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And the county must prepare a CEDS at least every 5 years to qualify for this funding. So this is our 3rd-year update that we've been working on with Grow America of that 5-year CEDS process. And the focus of this year's update builds on previous analyses of the county's emerging technology ecosystem with an emphasis on agriculture and climate resilience. These two areas receive particular emphasis this year because they represent both the greatest immediate risks and the most significant opportunities for positioning Monterey County as a national leader in sustainable economic development. So these next few slides, we'll just be diving right into some high-level economic data that's provided in the report that kind of assesses and analyzes Monterey County's economic landscape. So starting with population, in 2024, Monterey County was home to just over 436,000 residents. However, since 2019, the county has experienced a continuous year-over-year decline, shedding a total of more than 4,500 residents over 5 years. This trend reflects broader patterns of slowed population growth and outmigration seen in parts of coastal California, particularly in regions facing high housing costs and economic uncertainty, including in key industries like agriculture and tourism. Looking at the breakdown across cities, which is the table on the right, there was some growth in this period in particularly Marina and King City, and we'll see in some later slides that this is tied to the relative affordability of these areas. In terms of job growth, between 2019 and 2023, total employment in Monterey County kind of fluctuated, which reflected both the impacts of the pandemic and the region's shifting economic landscape. In 2019, the county had over 224,000 jobs, but then was met with a sharp decline in 2020 to roughly 210,000 jobs. However, by 2022, countywide employment recovered and went a little bit above pre-pandemic levels, but then declined a little bit in 2023. And so employment in 2023 was about back to where it was in 2019. And just looking a bit deeper within specific industries, there really was a range of growth across different sectors. Industries with the most growth, which is what we have pictured here on the table on the right, were in healthcare and social assistance, construction, government, education, and arts and entertainment. However, there were some industries that did face declines, and that included some of the steepest declines were in finance and insurance and in the information sectors. In terms of wages, between 2019 and 2023, the average annual wage in Monterey County rose from about $50,000 average annually to nearly $59,000. And this is in nominal terms, that increase is about 20%. However, when we adjust for inflation, real wages in 2023 remained at about the same levels as they were in 2019, which is at about $49,500 annually. And this really just speaks to kind of the growing cost constraints in the region, for many workers, especially lower wage sectors like agriculture, food service, and retail. This means continued financial strain as the price of goods and services continues growing, but wages are not growing at that same pace. And this next slide kind of speaks to that a bit more specifically, looking at housing as just showing that case in point in the growth between wages and the costs of goods and services. So between 2019 and 2024, home prices in Monterey County have surged far beyond local wage growth, really just deepening affordability challenges across the region. So while that nominal wage growth was around 20% over the 5-year period, home values had risen by more than 50%, with the median price reaching over $820,000 in 2024. So now we'll dive deeper into just the agriculture sector indicators. So Monterey County's agriculture sector currently stands at a critical juncture, balancing its position as a national leader in areas like crop production, however, also facing mounting workforce and climate pressures that threaten its long-term viability. So this is just kind of providing a high level, the ag sector is really a critical part of the county's economy. In 2023, the county's agricultural production output totaled $4.4 billion, which was about the same level it was in 2019. 2020 saw a little bit of a drop as a result of the pandemic, and then there was a little bit of a bump going up into 2022, and then it's kind of leveled back down to 2019 levels in 2023. But ultimately, this, the 2023 value, this translates to significant economic activity that is generated across the county. So the county's agriculture industry accounts for about $9.1 billion in contributions to Monterey County's gross regional product and generated $692 million in state and local tax revenues. The industry directly employs, that's like actual jobs within the agriculture industry, directly employs about 58,000 workers. When we account for kind of the other industries that it supports downstream through supply chain interactions, that total impact of the agriculture sector in Monterey County is over 88,000 jobs that it supports. And this is just going back to kind of jobs and wages, but looking at a little bit more of the historical trends. So agriculture employment has remained relatively flat over the last 5-year period, with a little bump in 2022, but then went back down in 2023 to, again, kind of the same level as in 2019. Wages increased about 16% in this 5-year period. However, and this is nominal wages, as previously shown, that kind of wage growth has not kept up with some other key costs in the region. These next few slides are just a few things to consider that are important to consider regarding the agriculture workforce. So the workforce does tend to skew a little bit older, especially than in previous decades. So it is an aging workforce. A growing proportion of agriculture workers are now aged 40 and above, which is reflecting both limited pipeline development and declining entry among younger generations. And the median age of agriculture workers in the US is 46 years old. Comparing that to other key industries in Monterey, like healthcare and social assistance, the median age in that industry is 43 years old. And then in sectors like accommodation and food services, arts, entertainment, and recreation, their median ages are below 40. And then on average, agricultural workers are 4 years older than the median age of the entire US labor force. So it's just, with agriculture being such a critical component of Monterey County's employment, it's important to consider kind of that being more of an aging workforce than in other industries. In addition, it's important to consider kind of the immigration aspect of it as well. So from the mid-1990s through the early 2000s, the share of unauthorized farm workers in the US, and this is a nationwide figure, peaked at over 50%, highlighting the agricultural sector's longstanding reliance on undocumented labor nationwide. And although that share has slightly declined in recent years, sitting at 42% in 2022, the share of US-born farm workers has remained relatively low compared to immigrant labor. And so this national trend mirrors what's unfolding in Monterey County, where labor-intensive crops are increasingly supported by foreign workers recruited through the H-2A visa program, which gets us into this next slide. And I'll primarily focus just talking about the table on the right. So the rise in H-2A guest worker certifications in Monterey County over the past decade has been very significant. In 2013, just 44 H-2A positions were certified in the county, which represented only 1% of California's total at the time. By 2023, that number had surged to over 8,000 certifications, accounting for nearly 30% of all H-2A certifications statewide, which was the highest share of any California county. And this exponential growth really just reflects Monterey County's, increasing dependence on immigrant labor to sustain its agricultural output. So that's just another, very important consideration, just given some policy shifts. And lastly, there are certainly climate considerations that we can't, not acknowledge. Increases in the number of extreme heat days, particularly during the spring and summer growing seasons, pose a critical threat to the county's most valuable crops. And, extreme heat days are only expected to continue rising. And so this last section is really just to touch on the challenges and opportunities that have come up in our research and during our stakeholder interviews. So to begin with the challenges, labor shortages and workforce vulnerability. Monterey's growers face acute labor shortages exacerbated by immigration enforcement concerns and a lack of legal pathways for consistent farm labor. Increasing reliance on H-2A workers comes with its own challenges, including housing, transportation, and integration needs. Technology access and education gaps was also identified as another significant challenge. Small and mid-sized farms face steep barriers in accessing capital, training, and technical support needed to modernize. Meanwhile, K-12 agricultural education in much of the county remains under-resourced, limiting awareness of career paths in farming, ag mechanics, and sustainable land stewardship. Regulatory complexity and compliance burdens is another was another issue or theme that kind of came up. So state and county regulations and processes such as prolonged project approval timelines, CEQA litigation risks, and electrification mandates that are difficult to implement tend to disproportionately burden small and mid-sized farms, which lack the capacity to absorb additional compliance costs. And then the two final kind of major challenge themes that came up were housing affordability and infrastructure barriers. Although over 5,000 farm worker beds have been built in the last decade across the county, access to housing for ag tech professionals, drone operators, and skilled mechanics remains limited. Regulatory hurdles continue to slow housing approvals, and many potential development sites lack basic utility access. And then finally, climate stress and water security. Extreme heat, drought, and increasingly erratic weather are changing the viability of key crops and threatening farmland in low-lying areas. Additionally, SGMA-related pumping restrictions, saltwater intrusion, and regulatory uncertainty have already pushed some land into fallowing. And then this is the last section of the presentation, but we'll dive into some of the opportunities that kind of came up. So one opportunity was positioning Monterey County as an ag tech leader by supporting ag tech startup incubation, workforce development, and regional marketing efforts that emphasize the county's unique crop profile and technological edge. Another opportunity was reimagining workforce development and education, strengthening the education pipeline from middle school through college by investing in and expanding CTE pathways, upgrading agricultural program facilities, and aligning curricula with emerging ag tech careers. Revitalizing small farms through ecosystem development was another opportunity. And an example of this would be developing demonstration projects and targeted support programs to improve small and mid-sized farmers' access to land, regenerative practices, and new technologies that promote long-term resilience. And then finally, opportunities around addressing the housing imbalance, advocate for regulatory reforms, and explore community land trust models to increase the supply of affordable housing, particularly for mid-skill and ag tech professionals in the agricultural workforce. Building Monterey County's reputation as a leader in agricultural sustainability, create a compelling narrative around sustainable agriculture that positions Monterey County as a national leader in climate resilience, carbon farming, and regenerative innovation with cross-sector coordination to match. And finally, unlocking agricultural tourism and storytelling potential, develop agritourism demonstration sites along key corridors to connect regenerative farming, ag tech, and public education while working to modernize zoning and general plan policies that currently limit growth. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. And with that, supervisors, we're available for any questions you have or any comments. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Supervisor Church?
Yes, when looking at some of the population and the housing data that was presented here, and there was a sidebar breakdown. It was all cities that's going on. And a quarter of the population of Monterey County is unincorporated. So I'm just pointing out that'd be maybe good in the future to really include some of that in there, just in terms of trends, because it is such a large, it would be the second largest city in the county if it was a city. Second, and this was in the presentation, it was in the report, and I'm assuming it's an error, or unless there's some other way this number's coming up on. It's on page 9, the rank of Monterey County products by market value, and it has Monterey County as a number 1 in the state and number 1 in the country. My understanding is it's actually the 4th, unless we're looking at something else here that I'm not familiar with, and we're using a comparison.
Yeah, so I apologize, I don't have that exact number in front of me, but
Page 9.
I do believe it's a breakdown of a specific, like from the crop production, like a subsection of crop production. Monterey County kind of ranking.
That's not what it says on page. It says at the very top, it says crops, and it has number 1. It's on page 9 of the report, and then it does have a subsection breaking down there on vegetables is number 1. I was just,
Okay,
I'm just pointing out it's an error there unless you have some numbers that I'm unfamiliar with.
We can go back and review that with the civil economics team to make sure we get that corrected.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I also wanted to highlight the part about the revitalizing the small farms and doing things with that. I think that's just really important, whether it's agritourism or whatever that we're doing. There's 1,000 farms in this county. Half of those, 500, gross under $200,000, and it's a means of life for a lot of people that way. And I think they get overlooked generally in terms of the big growers, which rank us up at number 4. And but it fills a lot of specialty crop needs, and I just want to really point out my pleasure in seeing it highlighted on there, and hope we can take whatever efforts that need to be done in the future to continue to support growers in that direction.
Supervisor Alejo.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Alyssa, thank you very much, and to the team, our Economic Development Director. Very much appreciated to get a sense of our workforce and issues facing our working families here in Monterey County. One thing that was very eye-opening was to see the median age of agricultural sector employees, more than any listed there at 46, which tells us a lot, right? That our domestic workforce is aging in agriculture, that if something doesn't happen soon, we already have a labor shortage, and that's why I think out of all the counties, the ag counties, we're almost at 30% for certifications for H-2A workers. But that problem is only going to be more exacerbated, as our workforce start entering that retirement age and leaving ag industry. So that's very concerning to me, and not to mention everything going on these days on immigration enforcement, which makes the problem even worse, I think, in future years. But one thing that was not listed next to them, and maybe just a different category, was our second largest industry, which is hospitality. Is that accommodations and food services, Alyssa?
Yes, that would be captured in there.
That's a complete opposite,
under
right?
40.
That median age is at 31 compared to ag at 46. So just for all our residents who watch these meetings and our county employees, I mean, that was eye-opening to me, because I never knew that. And also that we have the largest number of H-2A certifications out of anywhere in California. It just shows that that issue is very real for the Salinas Valley, Pajaro Valley. Two other things that weren't mentioned that are concerning for me looking at the future of agriculture is also, Alyssa mentioned that some areas farm areas have been forced to fallow land. That's been true in the Central Valley for years, depending on the water allocations. Some of their prime agricultural land sits fallow just because they're not allocated enough water to grow food on it. But another pressing issue is in North County, Supervisor Church's district, which is not the problem there is, and the threat there is not being allocated water. It is that there are new potential restrictions because the Groundwater Sustainability Act and the saltwater intrusion in the underground aquifers that poses a very big threat to North County farmlands, and that should be put out there, right? That is a real issue. There's going to be greater restrictions, forced less pumping that could put all those acres that we see on each side of Highway 1 might be at threat of not being able to grow crops, and all the potential solutions for the water crisis there are very expensive, so much expensive that no farmer or local government can afford it. I don't know if California can even afford it. But anyways, it should be flagged as just one of those issues. It's a unique issue because we're a coastal county, and saltwater intrusion is very real, and it's getting worse. And it's getting worse, and it may be exacerbated with future housing growth, right? In Salinas, the saltwater is already reaching intrusion is already reaching Salinas. It's going to go more inland. Unless we're smarter on water, I think we need to build a tertiary water treatment to deal with the sewage and have more recycled water to deal with the growing population that is coming to Salinas. So that just a tied issue with what is happening in North County, because the salt water is coming this way. And the last issue as a trend or issue of concern is just how ag tech will impact. We're having some technical issues here. An echo? Okay. But last issue was not you mentioned like maybe housing for ag tech workers, but how will ag tech as is evolved, especially for some crops like lettuce, versus there's more challenges for ag tech in strawberries because of its sensitive nature of when you harvest it. How that may impact the future of the number of agricultural jobs? Will it replace workers, right? And perhaps not fully, because even we have these very high-tech lettuce harvesters today that cut out a lot of the manual work, but you still have workers on top processing the lettuce on top of these machines. But it's going to get to a point where that's going to evolve and potentially could displace workers with technology and machinery, mechanization. So that would just be one of those other trends that I think is something to watch out for. That's real. It's moving in that direction because of the labor shortages and the expense of bringing in H-2A workers, because it requires housing, transportation, meals, all that. So anyways, these were other things I thought that should be big notable items that impact the workforce and our numbers today and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll just share a couple thoughts. I know I also support wanting to see additional visitors come to learn about our agriculture. I think the challenge, obviously, our recent short-term rental ordinance has made that hard based on the numbers of folks we've seen not apply to stand their units back up based on the way our program was structured. But moving forward, trying to carve out a new path for those folks who wish to do it for that purpose would be an important way that this board could respond to make that a reality. Looking at some of the challenges I see on the list, one thing missing for me was pests. We've talked in the past about INSV and Pythium wilt, and when they hit in combo, what that does to a field. But I also know that the diamondback moth has been continuing to grow, and there's 4 chemicals currently listed for use through Cal EPA and DPR that don't really have an effect. And so everybody's really frustrated by the lack of a usable or actually impactful assistance in this particular issue, which is growing. It started in southern Monterey County about 3 years ago and has been spreading northward. Obviously, primarily focused on crucifers, and so understanding the challenge around that particular pest and its impact on our crops as it continues to grow, and more importantly, focusing on the fact that that impacts the workforce, and folks end up with less work when you only work seasonally. Ideally, it's a 9 to 10 month season, but in the instances we're seeing now, it's a 6-month season, right? And you see higher wages, but you also see ag revenue staying flat. So what that tells me is folks are actually not doing well when you had years of high inflation, particularly covered in this study, and you've had a flat line. It says that we're not growing in terms of dollar value with the economy itself. So challenges with tariffs and not being able to send our products to places like Canada, especially when they're not a product that is shelf stable and it goes bad quickly, is a real challenge for our local economy and something that needs to be addressed. Obviously not at our level, but the more that we call it out and point at it as an issue is important. And so as we look at those opportunities, one of the challenges that points back to is obviously what's happening in the wine industry. Here locally, we've seen thousands of acres poised for or already pulled and out of production. And that goes back to the labor issue, right? The folks who live and work here have less and less money to take home. And what that ends up doing is pulling more H-2A folks into our community, which we see as both a benefit and a challenge. You get a consistency in the workforce. You see investment in housing that doesn't impact local stock when these folks set up these housing units. But I will share a very personal observation, which is that in our small towns in the Salinas Valley, with the rise of H-2A, you see a shift in the buyers and what they're looking for from their local stores, and revenue changes in terms of you're not going to be selling couches, you're not going to be selling home goods, you're going to be selling primarily foods and services, right? And so the shift in our valley has already been experienced at a significant level where local businesses are saying, hey, these guys shop differently, these ladies shop differently, they're looking for different things. How do we try to shift to meet their needs while still meeting the needs and expectations of folks who are here year-round? It's a really weird kind of picture to be in, the shifting moment. And so I'm looking at this data, obviously it's looking backwards, and I would be really interested to see an update on this data in 12 months to better understand sort of where we're headed as a community around these particular challenges. I echo the concerns around water. Needing to protect the infrastructure we've already invested in southern Monterey County is also a key challenge, obviously, that feeds not just us, but our friends to the south in San Luis Obispo, as well as our friends on the peninsula through recycled water. That solution is a regional solution that for a long time has helped battle saltwater intrusion and really address multiple challenges across our community. So I appreciate this report. It really highlights a few key issues for our community, including the aging population. I'd be curious if you removed the H2A population, knowing that most of those guys are extremely young, what that average age of a farm worker would be. My guess is it would be in the mid-50s based on what I've heard anecdotally within the community. And so having that data pulled out would really be an interesting kind of point for us to consider as a community, given the fact that we are extremely reliant now on that H2A population to continue to do the work that we do here in this valley, which really benefits not just us, but our entire country and our partners to the north and south of our borders. And so with that, I also want to thank everybody online who helped make this presentation possible. I think it's critical in helping to tell the stories that are necessary. I look forward to a future where perhaps we have enough housing for everybody and the ag tech has come in a meaningful way, which I've shared in the past. My hope is not that folks coming from outside the area, but that the companies that actually solve the problems we're facing are born in this valley as well, and that those folks closest to the challenges are the ones solving them and end up being the folks gathering VC funding and owning shares of companies long-term that really bring solutions to the table. And so we continue winning as a region on that front. But thank you for this report. Really appreciate it. And we'll go out to the public to see if there's any public input on this presentation. Invite folks joining us online to use *9 via landline or the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen in order to be recognized, or anybody in room to come forward. All right, I'm not seeing anybody in room. No hands up via Zoom. I'll bring it back to the board, see if there's any final comments before we wrap this item. All right.
We need a motion to authorize the county CAO or designee to submit the CDS Year 3 annual update to the Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration.
But there's no one there to receive it. Just kidding. All right, I've got, is that a motion from Alejo?
It's a motion. This is a second.
Second from Church.
With the opening.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. With that, we have concluded our scheduled matters. We're going to look at our referral matrix, which shows no new referrals. Going to turn to the CAO.
Yes, I do have a comment. We did, in fact, receive a referral from Supervisor Church that we're working on in the background. It's going to be reported out on the 14th, but just preliminarily, this is for a request for formation of an ad hoc committee on the Salinas Train Station Intermodal Transportation Center between the City of Salinas and the County of Monterey. There's a little bit of background that we're doing in terms of an existing ad hoc and just receiving additional questions. So we'll have that reported out again next week.
Great. Thank you. All right, then we're going to jump into referrals, which begin with receiving a presentation in response to referral number 2024.13 from Alejo, Supervisor Alejo, my apologies, on the history of Recurso de Fuerza, a low barrier navigation center currently in development in partnership with the County of Santa Cruz. We'll go to Debbie Palinelli to kick us off.
Hi, good morning, and Debbie Palinelli, Assistant CAO. I am going to bring up this presentation, I think. Does it just come up? Okay. I know. I'm looking to see how to. I swear I'm not touching it. It's moving on. That's not me. Okay. Okay. So this item is the potential renaming of the Low Barrier Navigation Center that's in Watsonville. So, and it's response to referral 2024.13. So currently, the name of this center, and my Spanish isn't very good, so I'm going to try the best I can. Recurso de Fuerza was, which I am going to refer to as RDF, which has been kind of nicknamed by many people. So that's what I'm going to call it going forward, but everybody will know what I'm talking about. So just a little history on the project. Back in August of 2022, the county met with Santa Cruz County to discuss a potential partnership to ensure some ERF funding to develop a low barrier navigation center to serve people along the Pajo River. And in February 2023, the Homeless Services Director requested a county funding outreach team to work with people living at the encampment to identify a name for the proposed low barrier navigation center. Back in that same month, the board authorized the CAO to apply on behalf of both counties. Then in that June, the county was awarded almost $8 million to build this center in Watsonville. And then in February of 2024, the county and Monterey County and Santa Cruz County executed an MOU that assigned roles and responsibilities to each jurisdiction. And then fast forward all the way to 2025, and the city of Watsonville issued building permits. There was obviously a lot of stuff that happened in between, but that's just kind of a brief overview. So about the program, it's a low barrier navigation center. It's at a church in Watsonville on 118 First Street. It's going to be a 32 non-congruous sleeping units, eating facility, community area, pet area, showers, restroom units, and outdoor living spaces. It'll shelter approximately 34 individuals at any given point in time. And there'll be on-site services that include wraparound intensive care management, housing navigation, and medical services linkages. The administrator of the site was awarded to Community Action Board, and that was through a coordinated effort between the partner jurisdictions and the COC. So I discussed earlier a little bit about the encampment resolution funding, or we call it ERAF funding. And I wanted to just kind of tell you how the center got its name a little bit. And this is a response to question 24 on the application for the funding. And the question is, how are persons with lived experience meaningfully incorporated into the planning and proposed implementation of the proposal? And then please identify whether any perspectives were incorporated from persons who are currently unsheltered and or formerly or currently residing within the prioritized encampment. Our response to that in our application is the response below. And there was an outreach team, but basically the bottom, the bolded part there, and the proposed project will meet this need through the new interim housing project, RDF, to be funded through this grant. Encampment residents had proposed the name for this project. So there was an outreach team, they went out, and the encampment residents named the project. So changing the name. Couple of impacts that might happen. There might be some confusion within the community. There's been a lot of press releases. I actually went out and toured the site with, some of you were there, and a lot of the community members, and there was a press release, and it's already been called the RDF name for a while. There's a lot of agreements. So I said that we use the ERF funding. That wasn't the only funding that was needed. As with most projects, there was additional funding needed. So there was money pulled from many other areas, and there's agreements with all those areas using the old name. We would probably have to go out, maybe do some more community engagement coordination, some funder coordination, and then also, refer back to the state to see if we need to have, since we answered question 24 in the manner that we did, if we would need to change that answer or to add a different response to it to keep the funding. So through the referral, there were some suggested names, and here's 4 of them, and it has their some benefits and benefits and not benefits through the referral. So the first one was Hope Village, and the benefits are it's easy to pronounce, empowering, and memorable. See, I could even say it. And then one of the side notes of that one is there is a Hope Housing in the city of Marina. So we're a little afraid that there might be some confusion there. There is Casitas de Esperanza. It's easy to say, inclusive, inspirational. The side note on that one is there's a Casa de Esperanza is the King City home key. So pretty close in names there. Third one was Dignity Village. Again, easy to pronounce. The disadvantages of, so the people building the site is Dignity Moves, and I think they would really appreciate us naming the site after them, but it might be kind of confusing to some people thinking that we named the site after the people that are actually building it. And then the last one was Aspire Village. Like I said, easy to pronounce, but there is a healthcare plan with this name. The healthcare plan that's overseeing this site is CCAH, and they're the investor, and I don't know if they'll have an issue or not with naming it another healthcare plan's name. And then, of course, all of them will change the name from the one selected by the people that will be living at the site. So an alternate name, Casitas de Firenza.
Fuerza.
Fuerza. I did take 3 years of Spanish. They just didn't teach us this word. But I can get you to the library if you need to. So benefits of this name, it's inclusive, empowering, aligns with the recommended name of those offered by those who will benefit from the program. So that's just kind of an alternate name on that one. So that is the end of my presentation, and here are the suggested options to either keep the name, rename rename it, or to go out and do more public engagement processes.
All right, we'll bring it back. I'll go to Supervisor Alejo.
Thank you. Since this was my referral, thank you for the presentation. First, I want to start out by acknowledging Roxanne Wilson as our fearless county leader, because she applied for this grant, got millions of dollars to do the first ever collaboration between Monterey County, Santa Cruz County, City of Watsonville, Community Action Board, and the Presbyterian Church, because they opened their doors to us to welcome this project onto their church grounds. So I want to start with that. But we couldn't have a better time to have this conversation because the Tiny Homes project is set to open at the end of next month. This referral, I think, was filed about a year ago, but we were going through permitting challenges in the city of Watsonville. Roxanne had asked to hold off till we got through all that drama. We did. We went through it all, and then we had other issues to deal with, like raising the tiny homes because it's in a flood zone. A lot of complex issues, and that's why I always say this is God's work, because this work is never easy. But place names do matter, right? And I think for any name, and that's why I said before this place even opens, getting the name right matters, because we want this to be a household name in the Pajaro Valley for serving the people of Pajaro, Watsonville, Santa Cruz, and Monterey counties. We need to get it right, because as was observed today, and it started since I first heard the name, it is very difficult to pronounce. Doesn't have the much meaning in Spanish for such a tiny homes project. And that's why you don't see any nonprofits or any other project serving homeless or serving low income community, serving Latino community have this name. And you also want it to be easy for the community to pronounce in both primary languages, but also even the press. I even saw press shy away from it because they had difficulty pronouncing it in their news coverage. But I think we want a name that conveys its mission, but also builds ongoing community support, because it's one thing just to construct it and open its doors. It's another thing for the community to want to get behind to support this. And a name helps build upon that, because this project did have opposition by its neighbors and by other community residents, by some council members. They were yelling at Roxanne at those Watsonville City Council meetings. But if we have the right name, it's hard to argue against a place called Hope Village or Casitas de Esperanza. And in future fundraising efforts, I could see where CAB could do a fundraiser to raise money to support the ongoing operations of a Casitas de Esperanza or Hope Village. So what I did, I reached out to the CEO of Santa Cruz County, Carlos Palacios, who also expressed his support for the name change. For Casitas de Esperanza, Hope Village, Santa Cruz County Supervisor, who represents Watsonville, South Santa Cruz County, Felipe Hernandez, supports that change as well. Watsonville Mayor Maria Orozco, also very supportive of that name change. But who really wanted a name change was the council member who represents that district where the Presbyterian Church is located, and he's the one who suggested that we name it Casitas de Esperanza. That's his district. He took the most hits among the council members and from his constituents who opposed the project. He definitely, and he had asked us, please change the name before we open it. And also reached out to the other council member who represents the other side of Main Street along the Pajaro River, as this is going to primarily serve homeless on both sides of Monterey County, but there's two council districts on the Watsonville side, Eduardo Montesino, and then council member Vanessa Carter Quiroz also supports a name change. And lastly, I did reach out to the Community Action Board Executive Director, Maria Elena de la Garza, who also was okay with changing the name as suggested. What wasn't included on here was when we opened the Share Center, there was a formal process by the Department of Social Services to brainstorm a name, and Share Center is now a household name, whether it's the police department, Salinas City Council, city staff, county staff, the community. Everybody knows the Share Center, what it is, where it's at. But many don't know the Salinas. The Share Center stands for the Salinas Housing Advancement, Resources, and Education Center. That's what Share Center stands for. But it went through a process. It was transparent, out in the open. Names were suggested. Then the top 5 were put on a SurveyMonkey questionnaire. And at the end of that process, the Share Center name was chosen. But for the RDF, which we should not be calling our center RDF because it should be a name or acronym more inspirational than that. There was no such transparent process. And then when I asked for any records that showed where it came from, because supposedly there was a survey done, I said, well, let's see the survey. Where's the data? Where's the documents? There's no such record of any of that. So it wasn't a transparent process at all. If a survey was done by some CSU and B students, it could have been CSU and B students writing a name and turning it in, said it was done. There's no verification that actually did. And in fact, I'd be surprised if a Spanish-speaking homeless resident picked the name, because it just, from all my experience in all my life, working in the nonprofit sector in low-income communities, Spanish-speaking communities, immigrant communities, it just, for me, is not a name that would have naturally arisen through that process. I don't see any confusion with any programs in King City because they are 70 miles apart, hour and a half apart. When you're in Watsonville, which I lived, there's no confusion with programs happening in King City or Salinas or Hollister, because people know the programs that exist in their own community. So I like the Hope Village because it stands for the housing opportunity, programs and employment. It conveys to the community what's the mission there. It's about housing. It's about opportunities, providing people, taking programs to where the people live, and also employment, which is a key component to getting people out of homelessness to be able to sustain themselves. But Casitas Esperanza, I certainly support that. I hoped we could have a hybrid, have both names, Casitas Esperanza Hope Village. But I would prioritize Casitas Esperanza because that came from the representative of this district. He had really asked us to highly consider that. And so that's where I'm hoping that we could support. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything else. I think that's all I want to convey at this point. But I think this is the right time to do it. Perhaps choosing a name and then making sure we could circle in with the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors, so since they're our joint applicant on this, to saying this is the name we prefer, and hoping they could be good with that as well. And so that's how we get the blessing from both counties who were the applicants on this ERF grant application. Thank you.
Supervisor Church, any thoughts before we go to the public on this one?
I'll have comments after we go to the public. Mike, I have one question. Why, and I understand the difficulty of the name and some of the problems with it. When this first came before the board, and that was, I believe, before my time initially, why was this name accepted by and not changed, I guess, is that point?
It was before my time too, so I'm gonna have to look to Roxanne. Afternoon, morning, somewhere around that time.
when the referral came through, as mentioned before, we were in the middle of a lot of contention between us and the city of Watsonville. So it just didn't appear to be the right time for us to change anything. We just needed to stay focused on getting through the building permit process. That process took over a year.
But there was a name that was initially proposed when these permits are being asked for, and when the grants are being sought from the state. So I'm trying to understand why the name was put in here initially, if there's uncomfortableness with it.
So aside from the Sheriff Center, there's no history of the county doing an open process. I was not aware that there was a policy that we needed to do an open process when it came down to naming projects. When we had submitted the application, that was in February of 2023, and we had the name in the actual application.
When that was submitted, though, are you saying it never came before the board?
No, we did not get approval to name it as, I mean,
there was no application that was approved by the board for
no, we just
grants
asked
from the state or anything like this?
No, there was an approval for us to apply for the to submit the application, but we didn't provide the actual application. We did have a presentation that talked about the name in a slide at one point.
And that was, okay, so that was done before the board, but there was no challenge brought up about the name anywhere along that line?
Not at that time.
Okay.
The Supervisor Alejo brought it up after the application was submitted already.
Yes, I found out about the name because it was referenced in a TV news story, and as soon as I heard it, I emailed our staff. I said, "How did this name come about?" Right? Because they never came to the board for an approval. Because I thought there was going to be a process, like the Sheriff Center. I thought we were going to this board was going to engage in that and give a name, but it didn't. But I objected to it as soon as I heard the news story on it.
CEO De La Rosa.
I just want, Roxanne, for you to clarify, when the application was submitted, the application included a component where there had to be community engagement or respond to that question that Debbie raised. So when you submitted the application, the input that you had was the recursos de fuerza based on that engagement that occurred at that time, right?
That is correct. At the time, there was about 50 individuals that were living along the levee that helped design the entire program, and a part of that was naming it.
But like I said, I asked for any records, and none exist of that.
Community health engagement has shut down, so that organization no longer exists. I'm sorry that I didn't collect it at the time. So.
Yeah, but I did ask at that time, 2 years ago, it might have been, where I asked for those records, and they didn't exist at that time. I think they were still around at that time.
All right, so at this point, I do want to go to the public, give them an opportunity to give us some input on this item and see what they feel. I see Mr. Peterson coming forward. We'll give you the floor first. Invite folks to come forward and take 2 minutes to share their public comment with us. If you're on Zoom and wish to participate, please use the raise hand function in your reactions tab or *9 via landline to be recognized. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Name's Eric Peterson. And first, this project is just great. We need projects like this all over. And I know that's a lot to ask, but that's our reality. Mr. Alejo is certainly right about the importance of naming a project right. My father was in advertising. His advertising agency handled the Edsel. There's a great example of or the Chevrolet Nova is another one. There's lots of examples. What about naming it after somebody significant in the community? Somebody who's done good things, especially on these issues, or just done good things generally? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Please come forward.
I'm Pastor Dan Hoffman, and I'm the pastor at Westview Presbyterian Church. This is the project at my church. And well, first I want to just say thank you to all of you for kind of helping make this project happen, and to Roxanne as well, and her hard work to make this happen. My church serves on the levee. We've been for 8 years, serving breakfast to our unhoused friends and neighbors and caring for them, and I've grown to know and love them very much. Part of my reaction to you all in this is, who has the power in our society today? Who gets to choose what we name things? And who are people that often don't have a voice and feel voiceless? When I heard this name, I thought, whoa, I never heard a name like that before. like you said, Supervisor Leo, and I respect your opinion on that. And I thought, wow, okay, this is different. And I thought, I have the power to possibly change this. But this was chosen by the people I know and I care about. And I've gotten to know Roxanne very well. I trust her as a person of integrity. Been working with her for 2 years, really hard to make this happen. And I believe that the people on the levee that I know chose this name. They use this name when they speak to me about this project. I think it's beautiful that they chose it and that we're choosing to let those that are the voiceless, those that don't have the power, to have the power and name something. I think that's beautiful. And I think it's actually fitting that maybe it's a little difficult for some of us, because that really just says that they named it. This is theirs. And I think Jesus would agree. And I'm not going to say any more than that because my time is up.
Thank you.
But he called us to serve the least. And that's what I think this project is to do. Thank you very much. Thank you again for your work.
Anybody else in the room?
Good morning, everyone. Daniel Valdez, as a County of Monterey resident. Okay. I strongly urge the Board of Supervisors to reconsider the proposal to rename Recurso de Fuerza, which was the name chosen by the residents themselves. The name holds significant meaning and represents the dignity and voice of those who will be living there. The Pájaro Levee residents were directly involved in selecting the name, which symbolizes their identity, hope, and community. Changing it not only dismisses their participation, but also undermines their sense of ownership and belonging in a place that is meant to provide safety and support. Respecting the voices of the individuals that RDF will serve and honor, and honoring the agreements in place should be paramount. I urge you to maintain the current, sorry, I'm so nervous. I urge you to maintain the current name to uphold both the residents' dignity and the practical integrity of the Navigation Center itself. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
So I'm Eloise Shim. So I don't know how it translates, but when this girl just said it, it sounds a little bit like Dolores Huerta. So why don't you just name it the Dolores Huerta Center, like Eric said, after somebody who is, you know, a prominent person, and she's a prominent person, and she's a woman, you know, in that community, and everybody knows about that. Or you can name it Watsonville Share Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, now, if you wish to speak, please make your way forward now. Thank you.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Juan Arenas, and I'm the new Administrative Coordinator for Tiny Homes Recursos de Fuerzas. I also believe that the name should stay the same, not only because the people chose it, but because it does really mean something to me. I have lived experience of what these folks are going through. So during those times, I really didn't find any strength in anything. So if these folks came up with this name, it probably means a lot. And like I said, I speak from lived experience. And during those dark times, there was no hope. But by the grace of God, pulled me out of there now I'm here helping this project, and that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else in the room, I do see one hand up via Zoom. iPhone 17 Pro will give you the floor. You should have the ability to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. I was just wanting to say that these people have been stripped from their things for a lot of years, countless times, and that if they pick the name, that it shouldn't be stripped from them. And that's pretty much it. Thanks.
All right, I don't see any other hands up via Zoom. Nobody coming forward in the room. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Start with Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to address the comments, and thank you for everybody's opinion on this. But to address some of the comments, to say this came from the homeless residents themselves is really a myth, because we asked for the documentation, the proof, the evidence of where they came from, and there's not one single sheet of paper that shows that it was ever done, that they were ever asked, that this ever came from them. And trust me, in government, we keep records of everything. And as soon as the name came out, I asked for those records because I know this was going to be a question that was raised. Did it come from them or not? From my experience, like I said, and as a bilingual Spanish speaker, this name doesn't sound like it would have came from anyone living on the Powder River, because it doesn't mean anything, doesn't make sense for a tiny homes project, a homelessness services project. But the fact is that we asked to document where's the evidence of that, and there was none whatsoever. So when people keep saying this came from them, they're going to be stripped from them, that is not true. There's no evidence that this ever came from anyone living on the Pajaro River. And if by what other names came up, how many people were interviewed? None of that. None of that. Every time the county does a survey, we keep records of that documentation. That doesn't exist. And I doubt it ever happened. But nonetheless, we all recognize by the presentation today that it is a name hard to pronounce, doesn't have much meaning. No other nonprofits, no other homelessness services even has a name similar, because it doesn't make much sense. But we have an opportunity to get it right between us and our partners, Santa Cruz County, and choose a lasting name that will be easy to pronounce, that tells the community what this project is intended to do. But I think more importantly, to build the community support behind it, something that is inspirational, that's motivational, that will tell any homeless individual or couple that this place is going to provide these different services to improve their lives and give them better opportunities and get them back on the right track in their lives. So I just wanted to propose that we choose changing the name to Casitas de Esperanza, or Casita Esperanza and Hope Village, to have an English version of the name, and then to have this recommendation go to the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors for approval, so that we could get the right signage for the Tiny Homes Village before it opens at the end of November. Thank you.
Supervisor Church.
Roxanne, could you give a date when Santa Cruz County is going to be taking this over?
Starting in March, we will start negotiating the MOU to transition the project over. So about 6 months from now. So
Within a year, they're going to be operating this facility.
They will have ownership, hopefully.
And when that change is going about, Santa Cruz could propose a new name, correct?
Yes, they can.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I understand this difficulty with the name. I listen to speakers here from the public who are in support of leaving it the way it is. And it's going to be real clear, we're only going to have this less than a year, and it's passing over to Santa Cruz. I'm concerned about going through there's going to be paperwork done, and when this transfer goes, I'm a little concerned about the cost for time and resources from our staff to do some changes beforehand, when if Santa Cruz County and Watsonville really do want a change onto this, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for them to do it next year. And I think it'll be doing when other paperwork is being submitted. It seems like the prudent step to take in terms of resources for this county, and the folks that are in this room can have the opportunity to discuss that with their representatives in Santa Cruz County. Again, whether it's good or bad on this name, I understand there's some difficulty in pronunciation onto it. I do also understand, as Pastor Hoppen has stated, that then it seems like there's evidence that it was from the folks involved, and to hear from a few people I've heard that the name was picked by some of the homeless residents, or at least came from there, is that it does give them some empowerment onto that. So I'm with those two reasons, I'm inclined just to leave it the way it is. It just seems like it's more prudent for Santa Cruz County to do this when the time comes next year and through the negotiations, if that's the effort they want to take.
I think my concern would just be if we're at a point where Santa Cruz is also wanting to rename the facility, spending the money twice on signage and letterhead and all those pieces, right? So it kind of feels like now's the time, if we're going to do it, to engage in a back and forth rather than moving forward just the way it is. And if they do want to rename it as well, the struggle I'm having is, do they? And I don't know, right? I've heard Supervisor Alejo's reached out to a few members, but I think if we're sending over a recommendation based on, our board's understanding that there is some lack of clarity, and ask them then to, if we're empowering them to have that say, given the fact that they are going to own it in 6 months, I would feel more comfortable there, only because of that fact that spending the money twice would be a bigger, right, kind of thing to highlight in the process.
No, and I can understand that. I haven't heard anything from anybody in Santa Cruz County about wanting to change the name. I can respect that if they want to, but I do hear from the community about wanting to keep it. And, I don't know if they're going to have the same, I don't know what the groundswell is over into that side of the community, because I haven't heard anybody from the community out there really express the opposition to the current name, that they want to have it changed. I do hear the opposite here, and I've got to kind of go, when it comes down to it, I lean to more what I hear from the people, and I haven't heard anything from the elected officials.
So I hear you, Supervisor Alejo. I would feel comfortable at this point sending a recommendation of renaming the program to Casitas de Esperanza, or Tiny Homes of Hope, or the phrasing that you had, or allowing them to go through a public engagement process, right, to rename it, and sending those two as recommendations to the Santa Cruz Board of Supervisors to choose from the list, right? Just so that they have that opportunity, that we're not just saying, hey, this is the one, but either one, so that they don't feel boxed in either. It gives them that opportunity to have a transparent and public process to rename the facility and do it once and do it right. What's your thought on that?
Well, I want to I have a short time frame here to make it as soon as possible. I think it's better to give our recommendation for Casitas de Esperanza, or bilingually, give them two options: Casitas de Esperanza as a standalone, or alternative Casitas de Esperanza / Hope Village, or Hope Village, so it's bilingual. And say that is our recommendation, and if they concur, then we agree. Or if they don't concur, to also give that opportunity to engage in a public engagement process. But they're going to be also under the same short time window to do the signing. That's why I don't want to box the Board of Supervisors from our neighboring county in, but I want to say this is what we choose. If you choose, then we reach agreement. But if you think you need to go out for a public engagement process, then we want to make sure we're respectful to them, since the property is located on the Santa Cruz County side. And
Of the two, if we are going to go that route, I just want to say that we have 3 construction projects in my office, and one of them is Casa de Esperanza. So if we are going to go that route, then I would ask that the board consider not calling it Casa de Esperanza. Not that I don't believe in that name and think that that's exactly what this is. It's just in my office, it is a matter of 3 letters that can cause the confusion. We're moving a lot of money, millions of dollars, to these projects, and I would hate for there to be any type of confusion.
And the only reason I want to put that as first is because the council member and Supervisor Hernandez both want that is their number one choice, right? So I don't want to knock that off when that's what they suggested, the council member suggested, and that's how it originally got on us. I even sent an email. As soon as the council member sent it, I send it to all staff. I go, this is what Councilmember Montesino prefers and suggested. So that's why, for me, that was important to make sure we're respectful to the people who represent those districts where the project is located. And that's why we could have both, right? Or let's say this. The motion would be to support Casitas Esperanza or Hope Village, or bilingual that would have both Casitas Esperanza and Hope Village in the name title. So there's 3 options there.
What about Pueblito over Casas?
I just haven't vetted that with anybody, that's why.
Supervisor Church.
So I'm not going to support any recommendation going forth. I'm going to respect Santa Cruz, Watsonville. They can make their own decisions on their own name at that point. I mean, they can see these names and know about them, and they can decide when they listen to the community when they get ready to rename this if they get to that point. Again, I understand the concern about putting up signs, having to take down signs, or we pay for some signs, they're down, get some signs that Santa Cruz has to pay to go up. But I think that's probably a minor cost in terms of what I'm concerned about paperwork going through from our end, and a real time of financial stress and resources from our office on homelessness. I mean, as pointed out, we got 3 projects. There's some real work that can be done to help people, and I hate to see direction going here to do this just for a name change when, again, the opportunity for Watsonville and Santa Cruz is going to be in just a few months to change this name. And if they want to change the name, but we don't know if they will. We don't know what they're going to hear from the community when they can propose for a change onto that. And that's a decision for them, for another jurisdiction. We got ours. I got to look at what I think is the best use of resources for Monterey County. And the best use for Monterey County, I think, is to punt this, because it's going to have to just be a short punt. It's not like this is going to be here for years before they take over.
So I hear you. I just have that concern about the good governance and not spending the money twice. And so I would rather give them the opportunity, put the onus and the workload on them, saying if you want to rename it, now's the time to let us know, so that we only do it once if necessary, so that we're not putting them in that position. Also with that engagement, public engagement process through them, right? Not through us. And I want to be clear about that. I'm not asking Roxanne to go put up an online survey, but if that's the path that they choose, giving them that opportunity to put up a survey and ask the community what they wish to see. And I can support a recommendation if it also includes that option to them, yes, knowing that that leaves that door open. So
yes, so I can make the motion, Mr. Chair, and I totally agree with you. Even before it opens, to get the name right and not have a process within you're changing signage twice and wasting resources unnecessarily, and then creating confusion by having one name then changing it to the other. It hasn't opened yet. This is the time to do it, and so I would propose changing the name of the Watsonville Tiny Homes Project, and I would offer 4 options in this order: to change the name to Casitas Esperanza as option 1, option 2, Hope Village, and that acronym standing for Housing Opportunity Programs and Employment Village. Number 3, Casitas Esperanza Hope Village, which is just a bilingual with both names on it. And number 4, or further engage in a or further engage in a public process for the renaming. And if they do concur with one of the first three names, then that will how would you say, that would ratify, or that would result in the name change if it's one of those first three.
I'll second that motion. All right, so at this point, we've got a motion and a second. I'll go ahead and ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Absent? Abstentions? Hearing none. Roxanne, I see you coming forward. Final thought.
Can we also get approval then for us, from the board, for us to move forward and make the changes to the document? Is that?
It did not pass.
Oh, okay.
It needs three.
I believe it needs. I have to look at the bylaws very quickly then.
While you're doing that, there is quite a bit of administrative burden. We do have several contracts that would need to be amended. And instead of us having to come back to the board, I'm wondering if there's a way for us to approve an automatic, allow our office and Sonia to sign off on amendments so we don't have to come back to the board. It is
I can make a
lift.
additional motion to allow, to do that, to allow staff to make all necessary changes to any documentation needed in furtherance of the name change.
Thank you.
We need a, is there a second?
Second.
I got to get a clarification here. This is to go ahead with making the changes. I mean,
Should Santa Cruz
if it's approved
say
by
that
Santa
they're
Cruz County.
supportive, then it would just automatic, so it doesn't have to go back from Santa Cruz back to us to do it again. Does that make sense?
yeah, we need to confirm here. I mean, okay. Because, I mean, we don't know if the motion passed quite yet, so I guess if the motion didn't pass, then what you're suggesting, would not be, would not stand.
The motion would be in case Santa Cruz County concurs with one of the top three names, then it would just allow staff to have move forward.
Gotcha,
on the-
okay. I just
in the
want to
paperwork.
make sure I was real clear here.
That's a majority vote.
If you're just tuning in, your audio is working. We're just taking a pregnant pause here while we go through a couple details to determine whether 2 votes are needed or 3 votes on a motion that was just made. Thank you for your patience.
As I'm looking here at state law and government code 25005, it says no act of the board shall be valid or binding unless a majority of all members concur with therein. Not a majority of present, but a concurrence of all.
No, we established a quorum, and it's a majority of those present and voting.
If that's what the local board rules have, it could.
The trouble is, we're not, and we have several people looking for it, we're not seeing it in our local ordinance, which may be a reason to amend our ordinance in the future. Because
Otherwise, anytime we have a meeting with 3 people, if 2 vote for it, you never get any business done. It doesn't make any logical sense.
Now, that may be something that needs to be changed at some point, though I'm sure with the 125 years the boards, or 175 years the board's been here, this has happened a few times. But state law is, as I said, under 25005 says a majority of all members.
It doesn't apply to the board. That might be applied to other state bodies.
There's no act of the board. I believe it is. We are a general law, not a charter county. This is almost bad as those Florida recounts back in the 2000 election.
Hanging chads?
I understand what Supervisor Church is saying, which is the full statute says a majority of the members of the board constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. No act of the board shall be valid or binding unless a majority of all the members concur therein. I think that can be interpreted as saying when there's only 3, there must be all 3 in agreement for
That makes no sense. You would never get any business done.
I understand.
And you have to make sure.
I understand your
You have to make sure that government code
interpretation as
applies to
well.
the Board of Supervisors,
And
and not some other government entity.
But that does discuss a Board of Supervisors. Our ordinance is silent, however, as far as I can find.
All right, given the conclusion and the interpretation at the moment, I think what I'm going to ask staff to do is bring this back next week, continuing it, asking that they communicate to both the members who are not present this week, that we ask them to review the video so we don't go through the whole thing again, and show up with either questions, comments, and be prepared to vote on this item to help us.
Well,
If we've already voted on it,
if we already voted on it, it should stand if it in fact was a valid vote.
If you wanted to continue this item to next week and let me research case law on that government.
I don't. I want the vote to stand if it was a valid vote today. And we just need a vote to make sure that Roxanne can move forward if the vote stands.
Then I'd ask for a recess for a few minutes.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm not going to recess yet. What I'm going to do is go ahead and continue forward with our agenda, give council a few minutes. Next up on our agenda is the county administrative officer's comments. We'll give Sonia the floor for those.
Yes, and this week we have information from our Housing and Community Development team, so the department under the direction of Craig Spencer, and in this year, 2025, he has restructured and reallocated positions to address improved services, or my hope is that the community is beginning to see some of the impact of those recent changes and hires that he's made. There is coordination with our information technology department to address assignment automation improvements, but also to try to streamline processes to get work out in the community quicker. There have been 3,760 building permits issued for a combined valuation of $2 million. And there's been 23,434 building inspections completed. 646 code cases have been closed, with less than 550 new cases opened, which has reduced the backlog. 220 special events permits have been reviewed, and the team has responded to over 2,000 requests for public records. Over 31,000 phone calls have been handled, and there's a callback queue system that has been implemented so that customers do not have to wait on hold. The team has returned approximately $2.1 million to the general fund, and our Kent's Court in the community of Pajaro has changed management for more efficient rent collection and reporting. The team was also successful in the bringing forward the vacation rental ordinance, and also in updating zone maps to implement the 2010 general plan. They've updated the alternate or accessory dwelling units regulations in the coastal zone as well, and currently pending Coastal Commission certification. And they've also kicked off the Chular community plan update. Lastly, they've secured grants for sea level rise and adaptation planning for Moss Landing. And that is our Housing and Community Development team.
All right, board comments. Start on my left, Supervisor Church.
Sure. So let's see. One thing I want to point out is I'm having my Aromas Town Hall a week from tomorrow, Wednesday, October 15th, 5:30 to 7 at the Aromas Grange. It will feature other two supervisors from neighboring counties, Supervisor Kuzmicki from San Benito and Supervisor Hernandez from Santa Cruz, as we've done over the last 3 years. A little more closer up would be Saturday, and got two events that are fairly close together, so you can go to one and then go to the other. One of them is the Pajaro Resilience Mural Community Day. That's on Saturday between 11 and 2. It's you get a chance to meet the painters of the new mural that's being put up along Salinas Road, and has been put up in Pajaro. It's you get to do some activities, food, and music. Again, 11 to 2 this Saturday, October 11th. Also going on this Saturday between 12 and 3, not too far away, is North County Fire Open House at 301 Elkhorn Road, the fire station there. You can come meet your local firefighters, fire equipment on display, tour the station. It's all part of National Fire Prevention Week, and there are other open houses going on, fire stations around the Central Coast in Monterey County, I'm sure to visit. National emphasis here is on safe use, charging, and recycling of lithium-ion batteries, not the big ones at the best facilities, but the ones you probably hold in your hands. And I think that pretty much concludes it.
All right, Supervisor Alejo.
Oh, I just wanted to announce that I'll be joining the CSAC Executive Committee for a retreat in Inyo County Wednesday through Friday. On Saturday, we do have our first ever kickoff for our relaunch of the Monterey Bay Area Latino Elected Officials Association, and that will be a breakfast here in Salinas. And then on Sunday, wanted to invite everybody to support our young people in East Salinas for the Año Ciclovia event, which will be on Alisal Street starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
All right, and I'll share that last week we had an awesome town hall in Gonzales that was inspiring because it was a community that came together to highlight issues, and we really focused on mental health in our community. I think no one walked into the room expecting that, but the conversation was really fulfilling and, in fact, showed that they weren't just thinking about themselves and the community of Gonzales, but about the rest of the Salinas Valley and impacts on one another. So that was really uplifting in the way that the communities were seen across the region and those particular impacts and needs being really impactful to one another. And so I want to thank that community specifically. We had 3 members of the school board present with us, Araceli Flores, as well as Vidi Valdez and Jose, who also works for the city of Greenfield as their public engagement leader. And so that was really impactful, as well as Councilwoman Lorraine, who was with us. It was just a great evening. We also had representatives from the Sheriff's Office and Under Sheriff Boyd and CHP Commander King. Want to thank him for his time in service to our region, as he shared with me that he'll be leaving our region as he takes on a new assignment elsewhere in California, and want to thank him for his time and commitment to our community and the challenges that he's helped us shine light on. As part of that, I also just want to highlight that we opened a brand new office for the Arts Council of Monterey County in King City. They will now be co-sharing space with Soul Treasures in King City. To have that location available to our community in South County is a huge win, and I want to thank Jackie Atchison and the entire team, including Chris Long, who's president of the board there, for making that investment in Southern Monterey County. I'll also share that here over the next couple of days, I'll be making my way down to Redondo Beach, where the Coastal Commission will be meeting, and I'll be serving as a member for the next 3 days there. So thank you all for your support in those efforts as well. And with that, I'll conclude my comments and bring it back to the dais, closing our board comments and sending it back to council on our item 8 on today's agenda.
Thank you for everybody's patience. There is a state case. The judiciary has ruled on this matter, and because the statute governing transaction of business by County Board of Supervisors requires the concurrence of a majority of all members of the board before the body's actions may be valid or binding. Valid acts require the affirmative vote of a majority of the board's entire membership and not merely that of a majority of a quorum. So the prior 2-1 vote would not be action of this board.
And I'm Mr. Chair, I'm looking at a guidance for cities, this from the League of Cities, explaining when there is a 5 city council member, and it's explaining 3 established a quorum, and then when it comes to voting requirements, the guidance says applying the rules governing quorum, the council meeting, and this is when it's a five-member council, applying the rule of governing a quorum, the council meeting can proceed when only 3 council members are present, and if 2 of those 3 members vote in favor of a motion, the motion passes unless otherwise provided by law. So this guidance is stating something different. So I want to make sure that I don't see how this could be applied for 5-body city councils and not applied to boards of supervisors.
I'm reading a case, County of Sonoma versus Superior Court, that is still good law. There's also an Attorney General opinion, 58 Op Attorney General 706, that confirms that as well.
Is there more, if there's more research you feel you could do on this, I'd support, doing that this week and bring it back next week?
I'm happy to, but my initial reaction was it was not a valid motion or action, and I've just confirmed that. But I'm happy to write a memo to, or do more research to confirm this. But I'm 90%, 95% sure.
It sounds like there might be need for a referral on here too for board rules, let me say.
And I just want to make sure we do this cleanly. I just want to make sure we add that piece of Roxanne, because if it is valid, I want to make sure this vote stands, and the piece with Roxanne being able to do the paperwork. But I'd be surprised if that is the case, because at any time, any city council with 5 members, any board of supervisors has only 3 members, they could get no business done if only 1 member decides not to support it, right? So and that happens a lot.
I'll support that if this, depending on the rule, if this motion fails, then this motion has no impact.
Right.
But I would support that administrative action if we want to do that as a separate motion.
Yes, I'll make that motion, as I stated earlier, to allow that if Santa Cruz County occurs with one of our top 3 recommendations, that Roxanne or county staff be allowed to do any necessary paperwork to implement the name change.
Top 3 or top 4?
Well, top 4. Okay, let's put top 4.
It was 4, and then you use it.
Well, because if they choose top 3, if it's top 4, it's going to go through another whole process, right? But just keep it clean, top 4.
Top 4.
Okay, yeah, and I'll second that too for the administrative, dependent on whether this motion passed.
All right, so then all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unquestionably. All right, so then with that, I do have a question here, process. Should we find that the motion is not valid, is the item dead, or are we continuing the item in the conversation? Because at that point, then we will have a full 5 members present, and we be re-engaging in the conversation with all 5 members.
It is my opinion that the motion's dead.
Okay.
That it's not valid. This board could choose right now to continue it to next week. In the interim, I can also provide Supervisor Leo the research that we've discussed.
Yeah, I would say that in the case, as direction, in the case that the motion does not stand, then to bring it back next week.
So in the case,
I thought your comments earlier were you wanted this to be settled right now. A few minutes ago, I thought that's the position you were taking.
No, I thought it's settled in so that it could move forward, right? Because then if it's not valid because of a lack of.
So you're in favor of it, if it passed, of not bringing it back to the board, but if it failed, you want it coming back to the board.
Well, if we need more, then we need all 5 board members. Because here, for whatever reason, the other 2 members aren't here, and we have established a quorum and a majority have voted. But if that does not stand, then to have it come back next week with all 5 board members.
You could take a motion to continue.
Or direction that if the motion does not stand, to have it come back next week.
It is my opinion that the motion does not stand.
I'm not going to support, but I believe the chair could put this always back onto for reconsideration anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
all right. I see that as an option, and given that, I think we've taken the appropriate motions as necessary for today. And what I'm going to ask is that a legal memo on this item, on this question around the vote structure be prepared and circulated to the members of this board as soon as possible, just given this question. All right, with that, we have arrived at adjournment. I'm going to turn to County Council to see if there's anything to read out of closed session.
Nothing to report from closed session.
With that having been stated, we are adjourned. Thank you all.